Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. My name's Marissa. I'm 33. And until a few months ago, I thought I knew what it meant to feel chosen. I don't mean in the movie kind of way, not the fairy tale glow or the slow-motion proposal in a garden strung with lights. I'm talking about the quiet kind of chosen. Like when someone remembers how you take your coffee without asking. Or when they instinctively reach for your hand in the dark without saying a word. That's how things were with Dylan. We met when I was 26, a crowded rooftop party, warm summer night, Dylan's laugh cutting through the static of too loud music and half-empty drinks. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd just ended something with a man who made me feel like I was always reaching, never arriving. But Dylan, he had this softness under all his charm, a way of paying attention without making it feel like performance. The first night he kissed me, it wasn't fireworks. It was steadier than that. Like warmth flooding in from under a door. Reliable. And God, for years, I thought this is it. We traveled. We built a home out of a tiny 2-bedroom apartment with windows that leaked in the winter. We fought and made up, had lazy Sunday mornings tangled in sheets and arms and laughter. But somewhere between year 5 and year 7, I started noticing the shift. It wasn't obvious. That's what made it so cruel. It came in pieces. Like the way his kiss started to feel misaligned. Not rushed, just disconnected. Like he was kissing a habit, not a person. Or how our cuddles became mechanical. My head on his chest, him scrolling through his phone with one hand, the other limp around my shoulders. I'd lean in, trying to burrow into him the way I used to, and I'd feel his body stiffen, just slightly. Like I was interrupting something I couldn't see. Sex dwindled too, but that was harder to name. It wasn't rejection outright, it was the slow decay of initiation. The subtle pauses. His eyes looking past me, over my shoulder, even when I was naked in front of him. I told myself it was stress. His work was unpredictable, and his brother, Mark, had just resurfaced after nearly a year of silence. The family tension made sense. Especially after what happened. Years ago, Mark had slept with Dylan's ex. It was a whole thing, Dylan found out at a barbecue, of all places. Mark, drunk and stupid, let it slip to one of Dylan's friends. Word spread fast. It blew up their family for a while. Dylan didn't talk to his brother for almost 2 years. But then his dad got sick, and suddenly forgiveness became a family obligation. Dylan let Mark back in, said he was over it. He even made a joke about it at Thanksgiving, something about at least she stayed in the gene pool. Everyone laughed too hard. So I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I think that's what love does, it makes you believe people are exactly who you need them to be. We got engaged in early spring. Nothing fancy, just the two of us, snow melting outside, him kneeling awkwardly in socks and a wrinkled t-shirt. But it felt right. We'd made it through so much. I thought this was the part where the story looped back into hope. But the distance didn't close. The closer the wedding got, the more I felt like I was planning a party for 2 strangers. He smiled in the photos. He held my hand. But his touch felt like a formality, something expected of him, not something he offered freely. And I remember the exact moment I knew. We were finalizing the guest list. I asked, gently, if he really wanted Mark there. He looked at me, and for the first time in 7 years, I saw something in his eyes that scared me. It wasn't anger. It was calculation. He said, he's family. I'm not going to make this about her again. Not her name. Not even my ex. Just her. Like she was a stain he refused to name. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not in him, in me. I realized I didn't know what this wedding meant to him anymore. And I wasn't sure if I was still the person he wanted to build a future with, or the tool he was using to rewrite the past. Dylan is a physical man. That's always been his way. He's a firefighter, the kind that wears soot like it's part of his skin, who smells like smoke even after 3 showers, who carries chaos in his muscles and calm in his voice. He spent his life charging into burning buildings, putting out disasters with his bare hands. But emotions? That's not terrain he knows how to walk. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to lead him there. About a month before the wedding, we were in the kitchen, him slicing limes for cocktails, me hunched over my laptop editing the seating chart for the 4th time. I hadn't eaten all day. My brain was scattered with "do we have enough chairs?" and "will your aunt get drunk and cry again?" He came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and kissed the side of my neck. "Hey," he said, lips grazing my skin. "Come to bed early tonight. No laptop. Just us." I smiled, because it's what I do. But it felt like smiling with my teeth and not my heart. "I need to finish this," I said gently. His hand slid down to my hips, tugging me back against him. "Maris, it's just a wedding. We're already forever." And that? That undid me. Because to me, it wasn't just a wedding. It was a vow I wasn't sure we still understood the same way. It was my last chance to look at him across a room and feel certainty, not strategy. Not detachment hiding behind well-timed kisses. I pulled away, not harshly, but enough. "I'm not in the mood," I said. He let go, stepped back like I'd slapped him. "You never are anymore." I blinked at him. My mouth opened, then shut. There it was. The quiet, cold blade of resentment. I turned off the laptop. "That's not fair." He ran a hand over his face, then leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I'm not trying to fight. I just miss you." And I believe he meant that. But I don't think he knew what he missed. He missed the version of me who laughed easily and initiated things in the shower and kissed him mid-sentence. But that version of me only ever existed when I felt safe. When I trusted that he wasn't somewhere else in his head, with someone else in his memory. You can't build desire when you feel invisible. You can't feel sexy when the air is still thick with someone else's name, even when it's never spoken. I sat down across from him. "I need you to talk to me, Dylan. Not touch me. Not fix it. I need to know you're still here with me." He tilted his head, defensive already. "I am here." "What does that even mean?" "It means," my voice cracked. "It means you still haven't looked me in the eye since we sent the invite to Mark. It means you don't talk about your family unless I ask. It means I can feel the walls going up around you again, and I don't know how to reach you when you won't even admit they're there." He stayed quiet for a beat too long. Then he came over, knelt by my chair, and rested his head on my thigh like a man surrendering. His arms wrapped around my waist, the same way they always had. His touch was gentle, practiced. But I didn't feel held. I felt handled. "I love you," he said into my jeans. And I wanted to believe that was enough. I wanted to wrap my arms around him and let that be the answer. But I sat there, hands still, heart aching. Because love wasn't the question anymore. Trust was. And I was starting to realize, maybe he hadn't forgiven his brother at all. Maybe marrying me was supposed to be the final word. The power move. The win. But I didn't want to be a win. I wanted to be a wife. And I wasn't sure he saw the difference. It was a Thursday night, laundry half folded, a documentary humming on low volume, the kind of forgettable evening you only remember because of the way something small, stupid, can suddenly snap the air in half. I was brushing my teeth in our bathroom, wearing one of his old Firehouse t-shirts, my hair in a loose bun. He walked in behind me, shirtless, sweat from his gym session still faint on his skin. I watched his reflection in the mirror as he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, looked at us in the mirror like we were something worth admiring. "You're so beautiful," he mumbled, his hand sliding up under the shirt, palm warm against my skin. And I didn't know what to do. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth, foam around the edges of my lips, trying to pretend I felt what I used to feel. That soft tingle. That pull. That low hum that used to light up behind my ribs when he touched me like that. Instead, all I could think was, this doesn't mean anything. I spit, rinsed. He kissed the back of my neck. I flinched. Not visibly, not enough to make a scene. But enough for him to pause. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice already unsure. I turned off the faucet. "Yeah. Just tired." He kept his hands there for a moment, like he was deciding whether to keep trying or let go. Then he kissed my cheek and stepped back. "Come to bed soon, okay?" he said. I nodded, not looking at him. "I will." He left. I stared at myself in the mirror, that damn t-shirt hanging like dead weight on my frame, and wondered when my own body had started feeling like a stranger's. When I finally crawled into bed beside him, he shifted toward me instinctively. His hand found my thigh under the blanket. He rubbed small circles like he used to, the kind that used to make my breath catch. Now it just made my stomach twist. I wanted to want it. God, I did. But something inside me had gone quiet. I pulled away, just slightly, just enough to break the circuit. "Early morning tomorrow," I said. He sighed. Not angrily. Just disappointed. "We don't have to do anything," he said. "I just want to be close to you." And for a moment, I thought about turning back. About letting him touch me and pretending it was what I needed too. About giving him something so I didn't have to explain what I couldn't even articulate. But I didn't move. Because it wasn't about sex. It was about everything that came before it. The things we hadn't said. The pain I didn't think he even realized he was holding, or hurting me with. We laid in silence for a while. He eventually rolled over. I stared at the ceiling, blinking through the dark. His breathing evened out. Sleep came easy to him, like everything else physical. And I whispered to no one, "Why does everything have to turn into sex?" It happened 2 weeks before the wedding. We were having dinner with his family, one of those obligatory pre-wedding nights where everyone pretends they're thrilled, even though half of them are silently judging the napkin color or whispering about the seating chart. We were at Dylan's parents' house. Pot roast. Wine. Laughter that felt like everyone was acting in a play they didn't audition for. And then Mark walked in. Late. Confident. Like nothing had ever broken. Like he hadn't once torn something in Dylan apart that I'd never quite been able to reach again. I saw Dylan tense. Barely, just a shift in his jaw, the way his hand gripped his water glass like it was anchoring him. Mark gave him that familiar slap on the back hug, then turned to me with a grin. "Almost time, huh? Hope you're ready for this guy's stubbornness." Everyone laughed. I smiled tightly, nodding, but my throat went dry. We made it through dinner. Just barely. Small talk. Wedding logistics. His mom asking me, again, if I was sure I didn't want to include a sand ceremony. Then Dylan reached under the table and took my hand. It was meant to be sweet. A gesture. A "we're in this together" touch. But his palm was sweaty. Tight. Like he was holding on not to me, but to composure. To appearances. I looked at him. He smiled at me like everything was fine. And something inside me snapped. I stood up. Too fast. My chair scraped against the hardwood, sharp and loud. I need some air, I said, already walking toward the front door. I heard Dylan excuse himself a moment later, his footsteps following me outside. The porch was cold. I didn't bring a sweater. I didn't care. He stepped out behind me, closed the door quietly. Hey. Maris, don't, I said. Don't pretend you didn't feel it too. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Feel what? Him. I turned, arms folded tight across my chest. He walks in and you turn into a locked box again. And I'm just, what? The lid that keeps everything from spilling out? Dylan frowned. This isn't about Mark. Yes, it is, I snapped. It's always been about Mark. And her. And what they did. And how you never really dealt with it, you just shoved it down and pretended we could build something on top of it. His voice rose, just slightly. I moved on. I forgave him. What else am I supposed to do? You didn't forgive him, I said, my voice breaking. You buried it. And now we're getting married in front of him, like you're trying to prove something. Like this wedding is your victory lap over everything he took from you. He looked stunned. That's not, but I couldn't stop. Sometimes it feels like I'm just the cleanup crew. The safe bet. The woman you picked after everything exploded, not because you wanted to build something with me, but because I was nothing like her. Silence fell like glass shattering. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. I loved you, he said slowly. I still do. Don't make this about, I laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Dylan, I don't even know if you see me when you look at me. Or if you just see the life you were supposed to have and think, well, at least I didn't lose everything. His jaw clenched. He looked down at the porch, like it might give him better answers than I could. He didn't yell. He didn't reach for me. He just said, maybe you should go home. And that? That hurt more than any screaming match ever could. I turned, walked to my car in silence, hands shaking. I didn't even cry until I was halfway down the street. The guilt hit first. Why did I say all that? Why now? Why not wait, breathe, be kind? Then confusion. Had I just ruined everything? Or had I finally stopped pretending? And then, shame. For being the woman who let a ghost into our bed. For not being able to outrun a history that wasn't even mine. But most of all, for still loving him. Even now. Even after all of it. The days after the fight passed like fog, slow, gray, impossible to hold. Dylan didn't call. I didn't either. We were a week away from our wedding, and I was living in my sister's guest room, sleeping beside a pile of RSVP cards and a half-packed duffel bag. He texted me once. Just a simple, let me know what you want to do. No emotion. No blame. Just a question I didn't know how to answer. What I wanted to do changed by the hour. Sometimes I wanted to run back to him, throw my arms around his neck, cry into his shoulder and say, I'm sorry, I got scared, let's fix it. Other times, I stared at the chipped paint on my sister's ceiling and thought, maybe we never really healed. Maybe we just built something new over a fault line and hoped it wouldn't crack. I stopped by the apartment once when I knew he'd be at work. I needed shoes. A charger. The place felt hollow. He'd left a bowl in the sink, half-eaten cereal gone soggy. His favorite hoodie on the back of the chair. A takeout box on the counter. It was like he'd been moving through the days without noticing them. And then I saw it, a photo of us, tucked behind a candle on the coffee table. One of the ones from that camping trip 2 summers ago, when we'd gotten drunk on boxed wine and slow danced under a flashlight clipped to a tree branch. He'd moved the frame. Just slightly. I don't know why, but that undid me. I sat on the couch and cried quietly into my hands. Not sobbing. Just leaking sadness, like it had been waiting for a crack. Because I missed him. Not just the sex, or the dinners, or the routines. I missed the quiet safety of knowing we were still choosing each other, even in the mess. But something between us had gone silent. When I finally saw him again, 5 days before the wedding, we met at the park near the fire station. Neutral ground. He looked tired. His hair overgrown, circles under his eyes. He was still beautiful, in that rugged, stubborn way. But he looked worn down. "Hey," he said, like we hadn't detonated our engagement 2 weeks before. "Hey." We sat on a bench. Not touching. The breeze moved through the trees, and for a second, we just breathed the same air again. He spoke first. "I wasn't trying to prove anything by marrying you. I need you to know that." I nodded. "I know. I think. I just got scared that maybe I was still competing with someone who wasn't even in the room." His voice cracked a little. "I thought I'd moved on. But I think I just put it in a box. And I didn't realize how much it was still bleeding out." We sat in silence again. Then he looked at me, really looked. "Do you still want this?" The question lingered in the air between us. And I didn't answer right away. Because I did want him. But I also wanted to be chosen clearly, not just clung to when the alternative was loss. I took a breath. "I want to try. But only if we both stop pretending we're okay when we're not." His eyes welled, just slightly. "Okay." And just like that, something softened. It wasn't fixed. But maybe it didn't have to be, not yet. We stood, still unsure, still bruised. But facing the same direction. The wedding was small. Just family, a few friends, and a heavy quiet that sat beneath every laugh. We went through with it. I stood in white. He stood in blue. We said the vows, shaky but sincere, like we were daring the words to save us. And for a few hours, it almost felt real. Almost. Until the speech. Mark got up after the cake. Wine glass in hand, loose tie, smug grin. And he said something that sounded like a joke, just close enough to humor to mask the sting. "Here's to Dylan, finally finding someone loyal. Someone not into family reunions, right?" Laughter. Nervous. Polite. My mother forced a smile. I turned to Dylan. And there it was. The flicker. The ghost. He smiled through it. Raised his glass. But his eyes, they were somewhere else entirely. Somewhere painful. Somewhere 10 years ago. And I knew, even before we danced or opened gifts or climbed into the rental car that would take us to the hotel, I knew. He wasn't over it. He was still trying to win. And I wasn't the prize. That night, after the reception, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed in a silk robe someone had monogrammed for me, Mrs. Harper. He was brushing his teeth. I watched him through the open bathroom door, same way I had 100 nights before, but this time I felt like I was watching a man I used to love through a window. He came out, towel around his waist, smiling like we had made it. Like tonight was the happy ending. But when he reached for me, I didn't move. I said it softly, "Did you hear what he said?" He paused. "Yeah. And you laughed." He sat on the bed beside me. What was I supposed to do? Punch him at our wedding? "No," I said. "You were supposed to look at me." He didn't respond. "I don't think this fixes it," I whispered. "Us getting married. I think we both wanted to believe it would, but it just doesn't." His hand was on my knee. Heavy. Familiar. "I don't want to lose you," he said. I looked down at his hand, then up at his face. You already did, Dylan. We laid in the same bed that night, but he didn't touch me. And I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling, listening to his breathing, realizing I had married a man still haunted by a betrayal that had nothing to do with me, and everything to do with who he became afterward. And somewhere deep down, I think he knew it too. In the morning, he kissed my forehead. Slow. Tender. Like a goodbye we didn't have the words for yet. You know, people always talk about trust like it's this grand, dramatic thing, the kind you lose in a betrayal, a lie, a secret. But no one really prepares you for the slow erosion of trust that happens when someone doesn't tell you what they're still carrying. It's not that Dylan lied to me. Not outright. It's that he let me build a life with him in the dark, while he was still standing in the wreckage of something else. Something unfinished. I used to think love was about being chosen. And maybe, in some ways, it is. But now I know there's a difference between being chosen and being used to make someone feel like they're okay again. That's what I became for Dylan. A safe place. A clean slate. The woman who'd never betray him, never break the way his brother and ex did. But the truth is, I was never competing with his past. I was living in it. He never said her name, but I could feel her in every silence. Every time he touched me without looking at me. Every time we had sex that felt like reassurance, like proof. You can't build intimacy out of insecurity. And I didn't see that until I started shrinking inside the relationship. Until his hands felt like demands. Until our bed felt like a test. It wasn't about sex. It never really is. It was about how I needed to feel seen, to feel like my emotions mattered as much as my body. And he didn't know how to give that, not because he didn't care, but because he'd never healed enough to show up as a whole person. And I get it. We all carry damage. We all carry people. But some of us pretend we're fine until we put a ring on it, hoping the ceremony will exorcise the ghosts. Spoiler, it doesn't. That wedding. God. It was supposed to be the start of something. But the moment Mark made that joke and Dylan smiled, not because it was funny, but because he needed to look unbothered, I saw the truth. He hadn't forgiven. He hadn't moved on. He was still stuck in a fight he couldn't win. And I was standing beside him, wearing a white dress like it was armor. I think part of me knew before we ever got to the altar. But I wanted it to work. I wanted to believe love could carry us through anything, even silence, even shame, even ghosts. But I've learned something since. Love isn't a band-aid. It's not a reward for surviving something. It's not even enough, sometimes. You need honesty. You need emotional bravery. You need someone who doesn't just reach for your body in the dark, but reaches for the words that scare them. You need someone who knows what they're still healing from, and isn't asking you to do it for them. Dylan wasn't a bad man. He was a hurt man. And for a while, I was a woman trying to love the hurt out of him. But that's not love. That's martyrdom dressed in romance. I wish him peace. I really do. I hope he finds the courage to face the grief he buried, the anger he swallowed, the guilt he never named. As for me? I'm still learning. Still soft. Still open. But not at the cost of my own clarity. I want a love that doesn't need me to prove I'm different from the one who came before. I want a love that sees me, not as the next chapter, but as a whole story worth reading. So, no. This isn't a tragedy. It's just the truth. Sometimes you walk down the aisle thinking you're starting forever. And realize you're finally saying goodbye. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not finding the one who completes you, but finding the strength to stop completing someone else.